Week 0 gave us just a small taste of the 2024 college football season, but it really begins this week. It is Week 1, kicking off on Thursday night with tons of great games, and we're going to give you an updated Top 25. Didn't know if I'd need to make any updates from my preseason rankings to Week 1, but yeah, we've got some changes to make there for sure. But first, I'm going to give you some takeaways from Week 0 from the two games that involved Power 4 teams. If you missed it yesterday, Tyler did a video on the channel giving a kind of a recap of Week 0. He'll be doing some videos throughout the season, so make sure you watch for those. But I'll give you my thoughts now on these two games. And then what about the Montana State comeback? I'm not really going to talk much about the Group of 5. I'm sorry to Group of 5 fans. It's just I can't. It's just too much. Trying to keep up with all the Power 4 teams is enough. But that was a good game there. But we'll start with the Nevada SMU game, and then we'll go to Georgia Tech, Florida State. So quickly, SMU really made so many mistakes in this game. They're very fortunate to win. Gifted basically a safety there at the end when the return man muffed the kick, and it was a gutsy comeback. It was a great comeback. You gotta give credit to SMU for pulling that off. But boy, they played terribly. And that game does make me question how good they're going to be this year in the ACC. Last year against power teams, they didn't play great. So we'll have to wait and see how things look with SMU once they get into the conference schedule. And one of the things about Week 0, Week 2, even Week 1 and Week 2 is overreaction. Everyone likes to overreact. It's a long season, so Florida State fans, I don't think your season's over. Let's first give some credit to Georgia Tech, who came in there and outplayed Florida State. They were the better team in this game. At the line of scrimmage, they were the better team. Knew that they had playmakers on offense. Knew that they, would give Florida State's defense a little bit of trouble. But it was just the line of scrimmage where they opened up big run lanes against what was supposed to be a really good Florida State defensive line. And then on defense, Georgia Tech definitely making some strides there. Looks like a much better defense than what we saw last year. Of course, they made a coaching change, and looks like it paid off, at least based off of this one game. So now you have to look at Georgia Tech as, are they a player in the ACC? Are they a team that could possibly get to the ACC championship? I don't know the answer to that. I think it's possible based off of what we saw, but again, we need to see more football, obviously. And then with Florida State, again, I just talked about it. The defensive line really let them down. The defense overall let them down. I know that this Georgia Tech offense was going to be good. They were going to be explosive, but it seemed a little bit too easy for Georgia Tech. Whereas when Florida State had the ball, it seemed like it was tough for them. I felt like the key, though, to this game, and we're talking about Florida State's offense, was really that there was no trust in DJ Uiagalelei early on in the game. Every play, it seemed like he was just dumping it to the running backs. I mean, they didn't really try to throw the ball down the field at all. And when they did take the few shots, it didn't really work out. But late in that game, when you saw them kind of just turn him loose, let him throw the football and throw it over the middle, and he actually looked pretty good. So that's why I'm not sure what to think about Florida State. Were they just not trusting him? And if maybe they do trust him in the future, maybe they're actually still going to be a good football team, going to be really good maybe. So defense needs to get better, obviously, but I just don't know. I don't know what to think about Florida State right now, and it's very tough to figure out what to do with these rankings. But I will say with Florida State, the season's not over. Don't panic. It was one bad game, but I saw some things that gave me hope for Florida State, not to win a national championship, but still to maybe be at least in the thick of things in the ACC, and we'll see over the next few weeks. So I always say you need at least 4 games from every team to really be able to evaluate those teams and figure out where to rank them. But really not a lot of changes this week. Again, just involving those teams that played. Our top 5 looks the same: Georgia, Ohio State, Oregon, Texas, and Ole Miss. I talked about it in my preseason top 25. If you missed that video, you go back and watch it. I basically put teams into tiers. If they're really close, I kind of grouped them together, and I went by last year's final rankings to separate those teams. And again, that's how I did my preseason rankings, but it'll be a brand new ranking next week after Week 1. and it will be based off of the performances on the field, not preseason expectations. 6 through 10 is going to be the same: Alabama, Penn State, Notre Dame, Oklahoma, and Utah. And then we get to where things get interesting here. I believe I had Florida State at number 12 in my preseason rankings. And so when you try to figure out what to do with them, it's a question of, is Florida State a top 15 team and Georgia Tech's just that good? Or is Georgia Tech not very good and Florida State's not very good? And so you could make an argument for Georgia Tech being moved up to number 12 ahead of where I had Florida State. You could also make an argument for Florida State being out of these rankings. Again, you can kind of go either way. So what I did is I just split the difference, and that's where you're going to see this. So, all right, 11 through 15, Florida State drops down. Missouri moves up to 12. Then we've got Oklahoma, LSU, and Iowa. And then we're going to have Tennessee at 16, Clemson number 17, USC number 18, Miami at 19, and Texas A&M at 20. So Texas A&M was the last team in this kind of tier, in this cluster of teams. And again, they're ranked below these teams because they finished below them in the final rankings last year. So behind them, that's where I'm going to slot Georgia Tech. So Georgia Tech beat Florida State. They look like the better team. I have to rank Georgia Tech ahead of Florida State. I think it would be crazy not to. But I'm not going to drop Florida State out of the rankings, and I'm again not going to keep them both out because Georgia Tech did look impressive. And again, you're trying to compare teams that you have seen to teams that you haven't seen, and that's really impossible. So I feel like this is a pretty fair way to rank the teams. Not that any of this really matters. It's just a video on YouTube. But anyways, Georgia Tech 21, Florida State 22. That's where I decided to put them, again, based off of that first game. Now, SMU was in my top 25, but because of that performance, you look at the SMU team that we saw on Saturday, based off of that performance, did they look better than what I expect Louisville to be, or what I expect NC State to be, or what I expect Kansas State to be? No, they did not. So I dropped SMU out. So we still have, so basically we just moved Georgia Tech in, we moved SMU out, and the other teams are all going to be the same, just a slightly different order, again, with the Yellow Jackets going up to 21, Florida State dropping to 22. And again, that's where I feel like it would be fair to rank the teams after week 0. But if you have been following me for the last few years, the way I rank teams, again, it's based off the performance on the field. It's not based off of a resume early in the season because, again, the resumes are so different and we're still learning about these teams. If Clemson goes out and upsets Georgia on Saturday, does that mean that Clemson is the best team in the country, or does it mean that Georgia was overrated? You don't know the answer to that until you get more games and you can kind of figure out about how good each team is, and then you figure out, which teams did get the good wins and which teams, were overrated, underrated, all those things. And again, once we get about 4 weeks into the season, that's when I think we'll have a good idea of how good these teams are, but we really don't know even until we get 7-8 weeks into the season. So based off week 0, these are my new rankings. Would love to get your thoughts. Just tell me this. I think most people have Florida State in the top 15 or so. If you're ranking the teams, would you move Georgia Tech all the way up into the top 15? Would you move Florida State out of the top 25, or would you put them both kind of in the middle like I did? Give me your thoughts on this, and we'll have our first playoff eliminator tomorrow. Obviously, we're not really going to have any eliminations, but we'll be talking about just the playoff picture overall, and upset alert coming up on Wednesday. Those will be the next 2 videos. Hopefully, this will be a great college football season. I believe that it will, and I can't wait to kick off week 1.